right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Wellness Wednesday. I am super excited to be back. I know we took a little mini hiatus last week due to the holiday, but we're happy to be back. I am extra happy because we get to welcome back Dani Hindelang. She's a culinary nutritionist. Wait, let me back up. Chef Dani Hindelang. I'm super excited about this because anything that has to do with food, I love. And Dani today is going to show us how to, this is what we're calling a healthified happy hour. So she's going to share with us a couple of recipes. One, a healthy way to prepare tostones. So for the Caribbeans that are inside of you, I'm really excited about this. And then with that, a drink called the Dark and Stormy. I'll let Dani embellish on what those two are all about, but we are so excited to have you back, Chef Dani. I'll let you take it away. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you so much, Viv. It's an honor to be back with the HITEC community. And last time that I was on, I made the Dr. Green smoothie and I showed my secret ingredient, which was an immunity boosting ice cube. And I also shared with you guys that I was inspired to make that ice cube because I saw it in a spiked margarita recipe. And since I saw everybody getting so excited about margaritas, I thought, why not make a healthy happy hour? And we are going a little bit southeast in Mexico into the Caribbean. And today I'm going to be making some air fried tostones and a dark and stormy drink because they're both from the Caribbean and I think they're going to be a great combo. A quick note on tostones. I wanted to say that in Costa Rica, we call them patacones. And actually I was talking with a friend about my presentation and she kept saying, why do you say tostones? So I took it to Google and I Googled it because I needed to find out. And of course, Google knows too many options, but I found out that patacones and tostones is fine. Most of the Caribbean says tostones. I also know that Venezuela and Panama, and I think Honduras also use tostones, but we have all kinds of varieties. I saw one called, I wrote it down, chapinos, that they use in Dominican Republic, and then plátano pisao in Colombia, and plátano frito in Salvador. So it was just a quick fact. I thought it was really interesting. And going back to tostones, every single time that I go out with my friends and we want to have patacones and we talk about ordering them for the table, they all seem to be a little bit terrified of eating tostones because they have a bad rep of being very oily and very fattening. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the nutrition of the plantain before we dip it in oil. Plantains are originally from India and the Caribbean, and they're actually a fruit, but we use it as a vegetable in savory dishes. And as a fruit, just a regular medium-sized plantain, it only has 70 grams of carbohydrates. It has 7 grams of sugar. It's super low in fat, and that starchy texture is actually what makes it a great sponge for oil. And that is the problem when we deep fry the plantain. It will kind of suck in a lot of that extra oil. But just as a vegetable, it's actually really high in potassium. It has vitamin C, and it's a good source of iron. I actually read that it's one of the main sources of iron for a lot of really poor parts of the Caribbean that don't have access to other sources of iron like red meat. So that was an interesting fact. And that being said, the plantain on its own is actually really good for you, and it's considered just another regular carbohydrate that we can have in our diet. And today with the air fryer, I'm gonna be showing you how to make that into something a little bit healthier, and we can probably all be eating more tostones more often. So first of all, I wanted to start by a couple of tips on how to choose your plantain. I read on one of the blogs that I read about, just kind of find out how much information there is about plantains in the US. I noticed that some people mentioned take them out of your refrigerator. And of course, I thought that was funny because living in the tropics, we have a plantain tree in our backyard or we have them by, you know, a whole bunch of them together, and we just keep them in our kitchen, or we leave them outside and we just grab them whenever we need them. So we don't really put them in the refrigerator. They're completely fine to be at room temperature. And it's actually really good to keep them at room temperature, because when we're gonna go ahead and put them in the air fryer, we don't want them to be cold. So that was just a quick tip in case you do buy them in a store and you don't know what to do with them and you put them in the refrigerator. You can leave them outside. That's gonna be totally fine. And for this recipe specifically, we want to get green plantains. This is actually already getting a little bit pintón, which is what we call it when it starts getting the yellow spots, but we don't want them to be completely yellow. That's what we would call a maduro, and that's another recipe we can do another day with butter and sugar. It's delicious, but I need to figure out how to healthify that first. This is gonna be kind of the ideal color we're looking for a plantain to make into a patacón. And why do we need it to be green? First of all, because we want it to be really starchy and hold on that starch so that we can flatten it. And also because the more green it is, the less sugar it has. So it's also gonna be a little bit healthier. Let's start by talking on how we can cut this plantain. I noticed that a lot of people think it's really tricky, but it's easier than you think. So the first thing you're gonna do, we're gonna cut the ends off, and that's just a quick cut on both sides. And then what we do here is we just take our knife and carefully go down on both sides. You can tell what is the really, really thick skin and where it ends and where the actual vegetable starts. And we're gonna go ahead and just start carefully peeling it off. So by doing both sides, it's easier than just one side. Okay, and then we're gonna peel it off just like that. Okay, and then once it's already peeled, I'm getting there. The trick to the patacón is in the length that we actually cut the pieces of the plantain. So we want to do at least 1 inch cuts. And this is because we're gonna be doing a 2-step process in the frying part. Usually, even if we use a deep fryer, or here we use, like, a lot of people locally just use like frying pan and they add a good amount of oil to it. What we're gonna be doing is we're gonna do the exact same process using the air fryer. So the air fryer is basically a tiny oven. And what it does, it has a very high temperature, and they use a convection fan and goes really, really, really fast in circles. And that causes the heat to really get really hot, and then all the food will cook really quickly. And that's why it can make things crispy if it has oil, of course, but not completely deep in oil. Just like any regular oven, we're going to preheat it. In this case, I'm not going to be using it. I'm just showing you, because if I use it, it's going to be really loud. You can't even hear me. But I'm going to just kind of show you the steps on how we're going to make this once you're at your house with your air fryer. So we're going to preheat it at least for 5 minutes before we start using it at a higher temperature. In this recipe, we're going at 420 Fahrenheit, so it's pretty high. And that's because I really want the patacón to get nice and crispy. Just like you wouldn't put a pizza into a cold oven, we're not going to put a patacón into a cold air fryer. So once it's preheated, it will stop. It will have a little alarm that goes off. And this is one of the most important parts. We're going to talk about oil. So we're not going to use a huge amount of oil, but we do need to use a little bit of oil, because otherwise it's just going to stick. And I was talking to somebody earlier, and they were mentioning on how this air fryer works. And actually you can sometimes even hear things bumping around inside because it's so hot and the fan is really fast. So here's where it's important to use oil, and the trick is how much oil you want to use. In this case, we just want to lightly spray with, this is just regular canola oil. I also have some coconut oil, and I also recommended avocado oil. And we're just going to spray the bottom of the pan. And once the bottom of the pan is covered with the oil, I'm gonna go ahead and add in my pieces of toston, just like this, completely without any seasoning yet. And we're gonna put them in, and we're gonna set it for 6 minutes. And so those 6 minutes are super fast, and we're just gonna let it stay in there. And while that's cooking, I'm gonna show you how to make a seasoning mix. If you like your tostones just with salt, that is perfectly fine. They taste delicious, but I'm gonna show you a seasoning mix in case you wanted to make them a little bit extra special. I love tajin. I'm sure a lot of you out there are fans of tajin. It's just a classic mixture of chiles from Mexico. It's delicious. And I use it a bunch in my cooking. I also add it as a great topping for hummus or for guacamole. And I'm going to be using it for the tostones. So all I have in this little water is a little bit of water. And then I'm gonna put some tajin. Tajin is chiles, but it's not very spicy. So I do recommend, if you like really spicy food and you want it, you can definitely use some cayenne. I also have it here just to show it. I'm not gonna use it, but you can put a little bit of cayenne, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of pepper. And what we're gonna do with this seasoning mix is we're just gonna have it here ready, because as soon as my tostones or first part of the plantains get ready, I wanna make sure that I'm gonna have my seasoning mix ready, and I'm gonna have something that I can use to smash them. This is a tortillera, which is just a classic tortilla machine that I'm gonna be using, but you can really use anything to smash. You can use a mug, a rock, the bottom of a wine bottle. It's super easy. A lot of people who are very experienced cooks here just use the back of the spoon and put it right back into the frying pan. So it's whatever works for you. Once the 6 minutes are over, I'm going to go ahead and take out my plantains, and they're gonna look a little bit like this. I'm gonna try and show you this. And they have a little bit of golden around the edges, and they're softer, and that's why I need them to be exactly soft so I can press them. And I'm just gonna lightly press them, not all the way flat. If you want, you can make them all the way flat, but you don't have to. And I'll show you right here. It's gonna just start getting a little bit flatter, okay? And then once it's much flatter, I'm gonna take it off, and I'm going to pass this in my seasoning mix. And why is it important to have your seasoning mix with a little bit of water? It's because that's actually going to help with the crispiness of the toston once it's in the air fryer again. So this process, I'm going to do it with all my other tostones. And once again, I'm going to take my toston back into my air fryer and just lightly lay them in here. And this is a part where it's important. You can either rub a little bit of oil if you want to use coconut oil or any other oil, or you can use spray if you want to use the spray, and just spray it on the top. This is because we already have a little bit of oil on the bottom, but we want it to evenly coat every part of the toston so we maintain that crispiness. And we're just gonna go ahead and put this in here and leave it for another 6 to 7 minutes. So while that is finishing over there, I'm going to talk a little bit about the drink that we're making today. So to go along with tostones, I was thinking about the Caribbean, and what better drink to go with tostones than a dark and stormy? Dark and Stormy was originally made in Bermuda, and the legend says that it was the owner of the Gosling rum a family member, was making his classic drink, which he poured the dark black seal rum into a cup, and then he would just mix some local ginger beer into the glass. And one day a captain saw him doing that, and when he saw the colors forming in the glass as he was mixing, he looked at it and said, well, that's exactly the color of a stormy cloud that no fool, or only a fool or a dead man would sail into. And that's what gives it the name Dark and Stormy. And thinking about the famous saying that there wasn't a smooth ocean that made a skilled sailor. It really, I chose this drink because I thought it was something that we could use for what we're currently living, which is kind of like a crazy storm going out around us everywhere in the world, and how it's probably best to just kind of look at it from a distance and still focus on ourselves, our well-being, and taking some space every day to still take care of our body, relax, have a happy hour, make food with friends and family. And that's why I chose it also. But it's partially because I really like it and it's really refreshing. I'm going to be using some Flor de Caña rum, which is a Nicaraguan dark rum, but it's really just 2 ingredients. The original recipe, well, 3 ingredients if we consider the lime. The original recipe was the dark rum with ginger beer and a splash of lime. And what I'm going to try and do today is I'm going to healthify it by changing up the ginger beer, because the ginger beer is delicious, but the original Goslin's ginger beer has around 32 grams of sugar, and that is close to 8 teaspoons of sugar. So if we think a quick note about sugar, in general, women are not allowed to have more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar daily, and men shouldn't go over 9 teaspoons of added sugar daily. So if one can has 8 teaspoons, that's probably a lot. And if you have 2 drinks, that's going to be a lot. And so we are going to change that up. And what I did is I'm going to swap the ginger beer for some ginger kombucha. Kombucha is a fermented drink made by using black or green tea, a little bit of sugar and yeast. And it's basically very fizzy because it's naturally fizzy because of the fermentation. It also has probiotics. This has a very concentrated amount of ginger, which is gingerol, and that's an antioxidant. And it has very low sugar. It only has about 7 grams of sugar. So this is a much better alternative. I'm using the dark rum. I will be using some lemon. And once again, I try to play around with some flavors, and I made some coconut water and lemon ice cubes. Sometimes we go to the bar and we order a drink and it's delicious, but then it has so much ice that by the time we're drinking it, it starts watering down all the good flavors. And that's just not very useful. So what I did is I added coconut water and lime, and that has vitamin C. Coconut water has electrolytes. It's called nature's sports drink. So technically, while it's cooling your drink, it's also hydrating you more. And that's kind of the trick that I wanted to do today. And it still has that lime, which we're supposed to add into a splash. It's just into the ice cubes. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the lime, just because we will be using a lime wedge. It's very classic of this drink. And I'm going to go ahead and start measuring the components. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add these ice cubes into my cup. And then I am going to measure the amounts of, especially the rum that I'm adding, because I don't want to add too much rum. And so we're using 1 to 2 ounces of dark rum, whatever you prefer. If you like a really strong flavor of rum, you can use 2 ounces. And if not, you can use 1. And we're going to be using this kombucha. This is a local Costa Rican brand, but I'm sure in the US you have lots of really good ones. And I'm just going to open, and you can hear the fizz. This is basically like a fizzy ginger ale. I'm going to go ahead and pour in my ginger kombucha. And then I am going to pour some rum. Something I wanted to mention about rum is that rum is one of the oldest spirits that we have. And in moderate amounts, it is actually considered antibacterial and could help lower blood pressure. Once again, in moderate amounts. And I'm gonna go ahead and measure my rum. Okay, and now this is the fun part where this is where you kind of see where the drink name comes from. As I pour, and you want to do this slowly, if you have a darker rum, which was aged even longer, it's probably going to look even better. But as we start pouring the rum, you can kind of start seeing how the colors start mixing, and then the rum will start coming up, and then it really does look like a stormy kind of sky. So I'm just going to put this right here. And when that fell into the cup, but it's supposed to be in the rim. At least you get the idea. I'm gonna leave this right here, and I'm gonna go back to finishing the patacones or the tostones. So once the tostones are done, you're gonna hear the air fryer because it's gonna have an alarm, and then you're just gonna go ahead and take them out. This is super warm. Well, it gets really hot, just so you're careful. But in this case, it's already cold, so it's not a big deal. And I'm gonna go ahead and serve my tostones. This is a time also where if you wanted to put a little bit extra seasoning, you could do that. I do recommend at this point using a seasoning that is just salt, spices. No, it's no need to use any more water. No use to use water at this point. And we're just gonna go ahead and put the patacones right here on our platter. And you can see they're really crispy. Right here. And in this case, I am serving my patacones. I have a little bit of guacamole and pico de gallo, which is just a tomato, like a basic tomato with a little bit of garlic, lime, olive oil, and salt and pepper. And just a quick note about the oils, because I think that's important, is for example, coconut oil, which I recommend because it gives a really, really good flavor to the plantain, very traditional of the Caribbean. And it also has saturated fat, but it's a good type of saturated fat. And since we're not going to be using an enormous amount of it, we're just kind of lightly using it because we're going to be rubbing it on the plantain. It's actually going to be a perfect oil. Coconut oil is something that is an oil that could have a very high temperature without getting to a smoking point. So that means that it won't burn easily. It's really good for sauteing and for roasting other foods too. So that's one of the options that I recommend, just because I personally like the taste of the coconut oil with the plantain. And then the other option that I recommended was avocado oil. And avocado oil is really unrefined. So it's kind of like the extra virgin olive oil. It's very pure. It also has a high smoking point, and it has a very subtle flavor. So it's easy to combine. And it has vitamin E. And since we're going to be eating the tostones with avocado in guacamole, it really doesn't matter if you add a little bit of avocado oil. So I wanted to share these two things with you today. And if there are any questions, I would love to answer your questions.
Thank you, Chef Dani. Any questions out there?
I have a question, Dani. Now that I'm definitely going to go and buy one of these at PriceSmart, what other, real quick, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but what other little things could we make in this air fryer?
Bueno, actually, you can make all kinds of things in this air fryer. It's incredible. You could make apple chips, kale chips, chicken nuggets, hard-boiled eggs. I looked that one up because I was really impressed. It takes 15 minutes in a high temperature. You make a perfectly hard-boiled egg. You can make wontons, egg rolls, and any kind of fried food, for example, French fries or sweet potato fries. You can also use the air fryer instead of using a deep fryer.
That is awesome.
Yes.
Any other
It's
questions, guys?
healthy.
I think Selena's asking one in the chat. Why do mixed drinks have such a bad reputation?
Yes, so mixed drinks are usually have a couple of sources of hidden sugar, if not more. For example, there's a lot of mixed drinks that use simple syrup, and simple syrup is basically white sugar watered down into a syrup, and they add that just to add a little bit extra sugar, even if they're using fruit juices, purees. In the case of, for example, a piña colada, they use the coconut milk that also has sugar. So some of the mixed drinks are not very healthy because they have a lot of sugar once you add everything that's in them. And that's why some people tell you to avoid mixed drinks, but we can always find alternatives. For example, if you want a fruity mixed drink, you can make your own fruit puree, or try to find one that has no sugar, and try to avoid those fruit juice concentrates because they usually also have added sugar in them.
I think there was another question about if you know of any vegetables that are high in iron.
Yes, actually, bueno, for us Latin community, the most popular one would be black beans, ¿verdad? Los frijoles negros are super healthy and full of iron. Also, there is iron in spinach. That's another popular one, and in a lot of those dark leafy greens, like beet tops as well. But the classic one here in Latin America, and we see it a lot in Costa Rica, for example, people prepare in very poor parts where they might not have access to as much red meat, is a dark bean caldo, like a sopa negra. It's a dark bean soup with a lot of the beans, and also has a dark caldo in it. And then they put pieces of guineo or plantain, which are both really high in iron. So that's like one of the best recipes one of the local recipes for anemia.
Awesome. Bueno, muchas gracias, Dani. This has been amazing. I'm so excited to add this to my repertoire of yummy things that I can now eat because now it's healthy. So thank you.
Yes.
Thanks again for coming back. We can't wait to have you back again. I'm going to go ahead and share your information with the group if anybody wants to follow Dani on her.
Yes, absolutely. I always post recipes, and I'm happy to if anybody makes the tostones at home, please share your recipes with me, or I'll take suggestions for other recipes for the future Wellness Wednesdays.
Awesome. I've already put in my vote for chocolate cake. We've talked about it. So if there's others,
yes,
please feel free to work with the HITEC team, and we'll be sure to pass them along to Dani as well. Well, I want to thank everyone for taking the time. We appreciate it. This Friday coming up, we're going to have Marcelo de Santis. He's going to be talking to us about the building a resilient business model. So feel free to sign up for that session on Friday. And I can't wait to see everybody again. Dani, thank you so, so much. Stay safe out there in Costa Rica, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.